Well, hello there. Merry Christmas and welcome back to my channel, or Merry Christmas Eve, I guess. I wanted to paint a little something for you so you had something to do if you had a few spare minutes tomorrow or over the next couple of days. So I decided to do a little ornament in the tree with my favorite bokeh effect in the background for the Christmas tree lights. So I'm using this circles template by Westcott that I got at Hobby Lobby. I'm sure they have them elsewhere. It was like $4.50 or something like that. I've got my Bleedproof white here. I may or may not need it, but the highlights on my, if I decide to put some highlights on this, I may need it for that. So I've got it. We've got a different green. If you, this is chrome oxide green, but if you have sap green, that would be perfectly fine. I couldn't find my sap green, so. And then we've got Quin on red, which is, there's not enough of that. I'll have to add some more. Little neutral tint in case we need it. This, I'm not real sure we're going to need this, but I just wanted to be able to add some blue. And this is Indigo. This is Paynes gray. Some bright lemon yellow. In the middle, for in case we need to neutralize anything a little more than what the neutral tint would do, I've got some burnt sienna. And then my favorite green is my really dark green, which is just Perylene. My favorite green is Perylene green. So that's what we're going to work with. I did put a little washi tape around the edges because I didn't like the oblong shape of this. I've got a 9x12 pad by Aquarelle, which I really like their Fabriano 100% cotton. And this was just a little, I just wanted to make it card size, but it was just a little too oblong when I cut it in half. So I decided to use a little washi tape. This is washi tape. You can get it also at different places. It usually comes in some kind of a print, but I think they've got plain also. And they have different widths. So if you need to put a different width on your item, you can do that. It doesn't stick too badly, so it pulls off a lot easier than a lot of the other artist tapes that you can find. So that's why I like it. Of course, because it pulls off real easy, it doesn't stick fantastically. So every now and then you'll get a little liquid that gets under there. But anyway, this is a Princeton brush. This is a very tiny brush. It says 12/0. I guess that's 12 zeros. That's really small. This is 5/0 for in case I want to do any tiny detail, and I use that for signature. I've got a number 4, a number 6, a number 8 round. These are all rounds. And then my squirrel hairbrush for wetting the background. Sometimes I use a mop. If you have a mop around, that would work too. But I just wanted the pointy end because I need to go around the circle. You can use drawing gum if you want to around the circle. But I figure the steadiness of my hand is really good. However, the likeliness of me putting the drawing gum in an absolutely perfect circle is just about as good as it is going around it. So I'm just going to go around it and save myself the trouble. Let's add a little more Quin red because we definitely are going to need more red in this background. And we'll get to it. We've got to do the background first and let it dry for a bit, and then we'll come back and do the other parts. And I have no water. Okay. Let's get our background good and wet because we want everything to blend together and look like distant lights, out of focus lights, which is that bokeh or bokeh. Different people pronounce it different ways. I'm not sure what the accuracy is. I think it's a Japanese word. B-O-K-A-H or B-O-K-E-H. But most people pronounce it bokeh or bokeh. Anyway. Whatever it's called, it's cool. I like it. Okay, I think That may not be wet enough. I'm going to give it another little layer just so that while I'm doing one half, the other half isn't completely dried out on me. Okay. I'm going to use my number 8 round to grab some, I think the Perylene green probably. Spritz more water in these containers to soften up these paints. And we're going to put some dark green over here. Be careful around the circle. I'll put a green there, make sure it's really dark right there. And here too. Going into my Sienna. Just throwing some colors around here, also blue. Back here, maybe this corner. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm trying to blend it together so it doesn't create any harsh lines. I'm trying to move fairly quickly here. I'm going to lift out some things right down here in the corner before it dries so we can see our branch a little better. I'm trying to do it before it dries completely, perfectly. That's some down here. Nice yellow. Brush it with yellow first. But it is no yellow, so we'll see again. Two other things. Let's get this reveal. Oops, I got chocolate. Here, I'm bringing that. Paint right in this corner. Just trying to make some really dark sections so I don't have to go back and do that. You know, second layer. It's easier how dark is up front. You can pull it off. Because that way you always on the any effects you're trying to measure. Light one layer gives you. Sometimes when it's too much. It was clearly. Sometimes we're talking about layers right back. It's like a layer can cover up beautiful water effect you might have gotten in the first layer. Just like some water here. Just do some things a little bright yellow. Just yellow on my other page. Right. First cover that. Sure, fix it. So I'll just take some of the layer. And this might be some colors. This might be very unusual. So colors would be fine. Just finish with the little ball right there. And this is right. You can do that here too. You could. You can make this little ball. Actually, you can make it brighter. You can say this is a little decorative ball in the tree. I just like powder, so I can take that paint a little better. Take the red out of it and make it a little yellow. I'm not like painting background, but that's okay. I'm doing that because I want to appear like a little ball in the distance. Maybe we put a little up here in the distance. That's what I was drawing. That's okay. That's actually pretty normal. Just as you're drawing while you're in the background. I'm just forgetting this and put everything. I am going to take a little bit of white. Sometimes you can also like a really smooth reflection effect. So like that. Let's do it. There you go. See what that yellow did? That white put in there? Okay. So I'm going to use it. Okay, I'm taking clean paper towel. A little mini fan. I'm going to try to lift. Maybe, yep, it is working. Good. If you do it before it completely dries, you can lift out some highlights pretty easily, and then you don't have to go back later and add them. But it also gives you that distance effect. Well, that's too wet still right there. But it does give a bit of a sense of distance that you can't get once it's dry and you're cleaning it out. You've got all those super sharp edges. It doesn't always do it then as clearly. So this way we can add some little clean lines. That may be too dry right there, but give me a little bit. Okay, you do see what I mean, right? Looks like my blue really bled out a little too much over here. So I'm going to round that out just a little better. I wanted a smooth edge, but I didn't want it to completely bleed out like that because it's no longer round. There we go. It looks like a big old eyeball right up there. That's funny. Because it's got that really dark right in the middle until it dries out. Anyway. Okay. We'll let this sit for a little bit because we're going to add bokeh later. So we could make this look a little rounder as well, like it was a ball in the distance, right? It's better if you're going back into an area that's starting to dry to use more concentrated paint. Otherwise, you will get most definitely some cauliflowers. It's a bleed. It's a cauliflower bleed, and it sort of looks like a cauliflower. And sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. So I'm just using a little purer pigment so that it doesn't do that. And what cauliflower happens when you take paper that isn't quite as wet, because maybe you finished working it a few minutes ago, and then you take wet paint or water and come over it and add to it, and it just the part that started to dry absorbs all that water that you just put in there. Whereas if you use pure pigment, like this edge right here, it's bleeding out down here, which is nice, but I want this right here to be sharp. So I dipped into some fairly pure lemon yellow, so it won't bleed very much at all. That way I got a nice sharp edge to that little bulb right there. What I don't have is a sharp edge to this little bulb right here. That's pretty bad right there. See if we can't clean that up a hair. Make it look round. I'm just moving my brush out so that it doesn't leave a sharp line. I'm just sort of wiggling it, as you see. Just bringing it out a little bit to blend in with the background that's already started to dry. Don't worry if your ball isn't perfect. It helps, but it doesn't have to be, right? There's the cauliflower right there. See that? But I don't mind it. That's where I splashed water down. I did that there because I wanted that there. So sometimes you want it and sometimes you don't. It just makes for a nice effect in your background if you want to. I didn't use salt on this. Sometimes I use salt to create texture also. However, we're doing the bokeh, so I just didn't want to combine the bokeh and the salt. I thought that'd be a little too much texture. So that edge is dry enough. I think I'm going to let this finish drying first. Go feed my dogs, and I will be back in a little bit to finish it. All right, let's get back at it. This is good and dry. Took about 20 minutes. So now we're going to paint the background. Try to see. Let's do the light green, and we'll mix in some yellow to lighten it a little bit more. You can use sap green for this, by the way, but let's see here. I'm going to tap it just to not have too much on there. I know you can't see that super clearly, but it is there, and it will show up once we put the contrast behind it. If we add a little more lemon yellow, it would also lighten it even more. And you can even add a little white to it if you wanted to. But I think probably better off just adding a few white highlights here and there later. Let you see how I'm mixing that a little better. Okay, if that was the stem, it'd be... Oh yeah, that's considerably lighter. See, we had one coming up here, about right there. And then we've got that one that we made some highlights for. And let's say that we've got one that comes right here. I'm trying to make it a little easier. You can do these with a small brush, but we'll go back with it with a small brush, but it's nice to at least get a considerable amount of this work done easily. And that's accomplished fairly simply with this fan brush. Okay, now we can come into our Perylene green. I didn't even clean my brush. I just came in and we're going to put in some darks in front of this. Just another layer on top of our highlights. I'm going in all directions because, you know, these pine needles, they're not perfectly, when they come out, they're not, they're all over the place, basically, is what I'm trying to say. The words that come out of my mouth. Let's see here. We've got a branch coming up down here. That one's not a big one. It's just a little guy. I'm going to put one coming out of the, and I probably have to use a different brush to do this, but I'm going to try to do it with this a little bit. Coming out from the bottom of that, or behind the ornament. There we go. Now it looks like there's some little branches. Just hinted at, not super detailed. And since we've got a bulb over here, I figured we probably should have a branch over here coming. So let's say we're looking at the middle of the tree or something. So we're going to put a little branch over here. Just hinting that there's more tree going on back there. Okay, clean that brush out real well. These little tiny brushes, they don't handle it too well if you let them sit in paint. They like to be rinsed out because the hair is, or the fake hair, whatever it is so fine. So very, very, very fine. I just dribbled something on there, but I guess I'll just put a bokeh right there. Okay, I am going to my smaller brush. I think I'm going to use my liner. Okay, that's a very fine liner. To put in a little more obvious stems on these guys. And you can also use it to put your needles in, extra needles. But most of our work was done for us by the brush, which is very helpful because we don't have to do that much now. We just do a little bit and have a much more detailed effect, even though we didn't quite work that hard at it, which is the nice thing about using tools and techniques with watercolors. You don't necessarily have to work super hard at it if you learn how to use the techniques and the tools and get them to work for you. This I'm making fairly dark. I'll mix a little Paynes gray with that because I want them to show up back here. I'm going in different directions, but coming out from that middle so that it looks natural, you know? You want it to be coming out from the middle. But you can take the pine needles in different directions. I love these little liner brushes. Filberts, they call them different things, but most people just call them liners. I'm making this a little more, I kind of lost the center of this guy, so I'm just trying to clarify it again by bringing back where the middle of that is. And it's sort of fading in the background, and that's okay. That's what we wanted. We don't need it super clear. We just need to hint that there is a tree holding up our ornament that we're about to paint. You can also use this to add extra, this little liner, you can use it to add some more of your green if you wanted to add some more little bits of your light green highlights, maybe where the light hits a couple of spots. You can get as detailed or as simple as you like. Okay, I think we'll leave that alone and go to our, let's see here. Yeah, I think I am going to use the number 6. Okay. I don't know why I put my neutral in here with my red, but for some reason I did. And it is what it is. I'm trying not to let that mix in. Okay. I'm probably going to bring a little bit of the pine needles, Christmas tree needles, whatever, across this bulb when I get done. But in the meantime, we're just going to worry about painting the bulb. I probably should have pre-wet it first to allow some running of color, and it can sometimes create the reflections for you. When I drew this circle, by the way, I just grabbed something that looked like the right size because my outlines wasn't quite big enough. My little circle templates, I didn't think it was big enough, so I grabbed a bottle of paint, acrylic paint that I had sitting over here, and I thought, oh, that's about the right size, and I just drew around the base. So you just use anything you have handy. The lid to a mason jar is a nice size. Just depends on how big your paper is. You know, if you're doing a regular postcard size, then you're going to want smaller. Okay, I'm going to lift out. Look how that just made a nice little highlight for us, and we didn't even have to work at it. Okay, another one right there. And I'm going to take a little bit of Paynes gray to turn up some shadow back here. That's a little too much water. Create some shadow around the side of the bulb here. If you do this while it's wet, it sort of runs in and makes for a nice little smooth transition without a great deal of effort because everything else is still wet. Let's see here, a little more, maybe right in there. If you just sort of blur your eyes a little bit every now and then, it'll help you see whether the shadows are making it look spherical, you know. And you'll get an idea where you should add a little more shadow. But the idea is mostly you need to have shadow around your edges, except for some spots where the light hits maybe. Maybe the light hits right there. And I want it smooth, so if I see any sharp edges happening, I'm smoothing them. I'm going to take a little Bleedproof white and put it on here while it's still wet, because I want it to bleed out and not be a sharp white spot. I think I may actually, let's get rid of some of that darkness I put on this side and make that a side that's getting a lot of light. I'm grabbing my Bleedproof because my pencil line is showing really obvious, and I want a nice white or light, you know, light is hitting the edge here. Add a little more while I've got that right here. Okay, a little bit of my red, blend into the edge there. Sometimes a little yellow makes it look more like the light is hitting it too, instead of red, or instead of white. You can add a little yellow. And we do have probably reflections from other parts, other bulbs that are here, so there's nothing wrong while it's still wet, if it's still wet enough, with adding some reflection colors. There's green, obviously a lot of green around here, so we could add some green reflections from the even shadows from our pine needles. See? That looks kind of cool. Okay, let's let that red part dry. We can do our little golden thing here, which really it's in the shadow, so I'm going to use yellow, but I'm mixing in some burnt sienna because really it's in the shadow, so you can't see it that well. I just realized part of that is supposed to be glass, so probably need to do that in the darker red. Okay, we'll let that sit for a minute. I dribbled right there with something. I didn't know it. Okay. I'm going to put I have a bigger fan brush, but it's a little too big. So I was going to say I was going to try to put some more needles in with the big fan brush, but it really is too big. So perhaps, oh, that one's way too little. That's my signature brush. Some bigger needles over here just to... I didn't think that the tree part was obvious enough, so I'm trying to bring it out just a little bit more by adding some slightly longer pine needles. Some of this is going to be obstructed with bokeh, so I'm going to put some reflections on this blue also. Okay, looks better. I don't know if I want to do anything to this little bulb. It's kind of complicated if you try to start trying to put, like little white dots or whatever on it, designs. So sometimes I just like to leave them plain. And as of right now, that is what I'm going to do. I do have a gold pen and a silver pen that we could come back and do things with later if we want. Put some dots or reflections or something on it if we want to, but for now I'm leaving it the way it is. I don't like that right there. It's reflecting light from the yellow bulb there maybe a little bit. I'm kind of winging it here, so. Okay, our blue probably, let's lift up a little bit. About right there. I put that white on there, but it just didn't quite do its job enough. So I'm going to lift a little more reflection into our blue bulb, our blue bulb. And that's just by wetting it and lifting up. And then you can still come in on the other side maybe and add some more pine needle reflections on it or something. And maybe a little reflection from the red. We got that red bulb right there. Maybe he's getting a little reflection from that. Okay, let's see if we can't do a little bokeh. I'm going to get a fresh paper towel. Actually, a couple of them. So I can switch to a clean one when I need to. And we are ready. I'm going to do smaller ones here because it's Christmas tree lights, so I'm going with mostly with the small ones. Okay. I got a second one there. I guess sometimes I probably should tear off a smaller piece of this. This is just a magic eraser. If you get too big of a piece, you don't quite create the effect that you're going for. You know, sometimes light goes in a line. I'm going to do that right there. Maybe a slightly bigger one in the middle. That's cool. I want very, very slight back here. We don't want a lot of it. Just kind of a hint that there's a little fading, but not a lot. I probably need to round that out just a little better. Some people just use their brushes, and that's okay. I just like the really round circles. If you're going to create the reflections, it really works better if they're pretty round. And it helps if you wipe the back so you don't create more wet spots. That brush does not work. How about a flat? That works for a very light touch. We overlap one, smaller one right there. We have to cover that little place where I messed up and bumped it with the green too. Where's the wet spot? There it is. Okay. There needs to be more back here. We can come back over this with our little, this is in the background, right? So it's okay to come back over with our brush and recreate some of these pine needles. That's okay. Notice how I went around that a little bit. I was trying not to obliterate the little thing that holds my bulb up. Make that next one a little bigger because that didn't work too well. Oops, pulled up my paper. That's okay, my edge was dry anyway. Is that sufficient? I'll do a couple very slight ones. Like they're way back there, you know. If you go off the page, it does help it with the realism factor, you know. Okay, let's put one behind here. Oh gosh, that's going to be tricky. I'll do that. I'll start it with this and finish it with a brush. That way I don't mess with the edges of my circle. I think that's probably pretty good. Maybe an overlap one right there. And a little one right there. You can do a lot more of these. You can do bigger ones and smaller ones and whatnot. And you can color them, which I am going to do with some of them. I'm going to put a little color on them, which you've noticed if you're looking at photos, for example, where you've got this bokeh effect that happening within the photo. There is often color. And that's best done while it's still a little bit damp. And if it gets too bright, you can always tap it out. But it is more interesting that way too. It doesn't have to be a full color either, just even a little bit of color added. Sometimes they're orangey. Let's see, and the bright one's probably over here. Tap that out and make it lighter. There, I like that. That looks cool. And then you can make some of them brighter also with your either your white paint or your you can use white paint or you can use this Bleedproof white that I like, P.H. Martin's Bleedproof. I'm going to dab this because I don't want it to be very stark like that. So I'm going to dab it with my clean spot of my rag so that it doesn't look too sharp. The edges don't look too sharp, you know. This one isn't very obvious. I think I'll add a little extra to that. And maybe this one right here. Okay, I like that. I'm good with it. Now we're going to take a little bit of the dark green and go over our bulb a little bit on a couple of these spots. I am bringing a stem a little bit with this. As you can see, I'm sort of creating a bit of a stem so that it's not just coming out of nowhere. And right here, where else can we do that? How about right there? Okay. You can go over your bokeh effect. Now I'm going to clean this out so that I can put some white in here. With my yellow. Where's my white? There it is. Let's see here. Dip into this with something. Okay. I've had this for almost a year. That stuff, unless you're making huge canvases, which I don't, that stuff will really last. Okay, I am taking a little bit of water with my Bleedproof. Tiny bit of that green. A little bit of that yellow. Just to make like the light is hitting some of these stems. Just the tips of them, you know. This is where these little liners are fantastic, because you can just touch the edge. You have quite a bit of control. And in watercolor, it's hard to find control very frequently, so take it when you can get it. Put some little tips on here. Just adds a little something to it where the light is hitting it and makes little points of interest. I don't want to put whole strands. I'm really trying to make it just tips in the same direction as the existing pine needles. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to, but I do like these little details that make the eye go, oh, cool. It's kind of like eye candy, you know? You want to take people's eyes around your painting, catching extra little details here and there, like the light hitting this little part right here. And maybe the light catches a couple of these pine needles back here too. They're just little points of interest. I think that's probably enough. Okay, guys, let me see here if there's anything else. I think I'm going to define these a little better so that those tips that I put on there make more sense. Okay. This might be just a little too dark, or too bright, I mean. Just going to go over it just a tiny bit. Tone them down just a hair. That's better. Now that looks pretty spherical. I think the bulb turned out really nice. Let's put a little string on it, or hook or something. Can't see that super well, but maybe we'll add a little highlight on it just to make sure that it's visible. There we go. And a little highlight on our topper. And a little shadow around the edges. There we go. Okay, guys. Merry Christmas. And I hope you get a chance. If not tomorrow, then maybe later after you go to your family for Christmas. Maybe you can sit down and paint a little bit sometime in the next few days. And see, you'll have a card made for next year already. So that'll be nice. So we will see you again. I'll try to do another one here in the next couple of days while everything is a little slower and the world isn't going mad, which it has been for a couple of weeks. And get you one maybe with some snow. Although it's 65 degrees today in Tennessee, so I don't think we're going to be seeing any snow anytime soon. But if you've got some snow, please enjoy it for us. And I'll try and do something with some snow here in the next day or two, just so you get a little bonus one for Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and happy painting. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your friends. Bye-bye.